Hi, friends. Welcome to the Glisten podcast. I'm so glad that you are here today checking this out. You are going to be so blessed by today's conversation. If you've ever wanted to learn more about yourself, to have better relationships, to discover how you can grow as a person, like when we personally grow, it changes everything. It changes our relationships. It changes everyone around us, because when we get better, then everyone around us can get better. And so today I'm going to be talking to Jackie Brewster. She is an Enneagram coach. She is amazing. She's been doing this for a while, and she is so great at helping people become the best version of themselves. And so if you want to become the best version of yourself, you are not going to want to tune out. You're going to want to stay tuned all the way to the end to hear everything that she has to say about the Enneagram. So check it out. Hi, Jackie. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast today. So glad that you are with us. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on. You are a world-class Enneagram coach, so we're so happy that you're with us. And you know what I think is really awesome is one of the things that we always talk about is becoming the best version of yourself, wanting to be the best version of yourself. And so I was looking at your website and I was like, that's your phrase, that's your thing, that's what you want to do, is help people become the best version of themselves. So tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the Enneagram. How did you find out about it, and how did you get into it?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. It is a privilege and an honor to be with you guys today. So I got interested, or introduced, I should say, to the Enneagram. It was probably about 8 years ago, and I was going through a really difficult season in life. We have 4 children, and my twins, one of them had just gone through some major surgery, and the recovery was a process, and she had some complications in surgery. And so life just was kind of chaotic. And to be truthful, life with 4 children, little kids in ministry, it was just chaotic in general. So adding that fuel to the fire just kind of felt like it was just explosions all day, every day. And so I have a girlfriend who thought probably that I needed a little help. And so she gave me this book about the Enneagram. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You know, I start reading it, and I was like, I did the little test, and the test told me I was an 8, a challenger. And I was like, well, I guess maybe I am, because I feel like I've got to hold this whole thing together right now. And so a lot of that leadership, you know, came out. So that's kind of, I dove into it then, and then throughout the past 8 years, I've kind of dove in and out of it. But to discover a couple years into it, and when I was in a healthier place, and I'm not actually an 8, I'm actually a 7, the enthusiast that uses my 8 wing pretty heavily in situations that I feel like I have to lead well. And so my family is one of those situations I feel like I have to lead well. And so through that process, you know, my husband and I worked in church ministry for a long time. And 2 years ago, we kind of took the plunge and started our own company. In that process, I was like, I think that this is I think it's a passion. Actually, I know it's a passion. I really care about this. What would it look like to get certified? And so my husband really pushed. He's like, this is like your sweet spot. I think you should really do this. So that's when I really went deeper into the Enneagram world, and I got certified through Beth McCord, which is she's a strong Christian woman, so teaches biblical principles and truths as you infuse it with the Enneagram kind of thing, you know. So that's how it happened, and I love what I get to do. Like, I absolutely love talking to people and bringing awareness to situations and learning and growing alongside people on this journey we call life.
That's awesome. Shout out to the girlfriend who hooked you up, because, you know, I think connections are so important, and networking is so important. And if you think that someone is hurting or someone needs a little something, you know, it's always great to not hesitate and offer that help, because she offered you that book and she offered you that help, it helped you discover a new passion. I know I'm crazy about the Enneagram. Like, I just think that it is such a great self-discovery tool for those who may be watching and don't exactly know what is the Enneagram. Could you just define it and tell a little bit about what it is and how you use it in helping? I know you use it to help individuals, and you also help companies, organizations, and you do a lot of coaching. But can you just kind of give a little overview about what is the Enneagram?
Sure. The Enneagram is a personality typing system, and it has ancient roots. So you'll hear lots of different stuff about it, but it does have ancient roots. It's been around for a really, really long time. But around the 1970s, it was brought over to the U.S., and that's where we've kind of overlaid psychology on top of the Enneagram, and so you're beginning to understand why you do what you do. And so, really easy explanation is it uncovers and helps you discover patterns of behavior that you've been stuck in, or maybe you feel like you've been stuck in, but that you've created really, really early on in your life. So around the age of 2, you begin to develop patterns of behavior and how you're going to go into the world and get your needs met, find love, keep yourself safe, all of these ways. And so through our lifetime, we have just continued to lean on these patterns and develop them even more. And this is where we find our Enneagram number and figure out what's going on. And so the work that I get to do, or that I love to do with individuals, not teams, but individuals, is we just start where they are and we kind of work through like what's happening and what are the patterns of behavior that we see familiar in their life, and then where did they come from? And are they serving us well today? Are there things that we should be able to, but are there things that we're ready to let go of? Would we like to change some of those patterns? So it's really about patterns of behavior, understanding where they came from. And then, I teach it with biblical principles and truths. So I infuse it with the Word of God and ask the Holy Spirit to guide and direct our steps as we uncover and discover things about ourselves, so that we can be the best version of ourselves, so that we can do great things for the kingdom of God. And sometimes we have to get out of our own way to be able to do that. And so this tool has been one of the many blessings in my own life to help me understand that. And so I feel privileged to walk alongside other people as they journey towards awareness.
Yeah, and there's 9 different numbers. None of them are better than the other, right? And I know people will always talk about, well, I'd rather be this or I'd rather be that. And there's all kinds of ways to find out what your number is. Like we say, there are multiple different tests. I mean, you mentioned Beth McCord, the Enneagram Institute, I think is another one that you like. But that is not always the best way to find out your number. It's really kind of what you talked about is self-discovery. There's books that you can read, and which we can link those in the show notes so that people can access some of those tools. And you actually even have a book that's going to be coming out, right? Tell us about your book.
Oh, I can't yet. It's a secret.
Okay, it's a secret.
So
Can't tell. But it'll be coming out next year, right? So we've got some time to wait.
Yep.
That's exciting. Yep. So with the show notes, we'll link to all the things that you think are great for people to dive into. They can read those books. They can talk to other people, like people that are close to them, and ask them questions about themselves, because that's kind of another viewpoint, I guess. But I think the reason the test is not always just the only tool that you can use is because if you're not really self-aware, right, you may answer it not exactly accurately. So it's good to have a good full picture of yourself. And I think let's say I talked to you one time last week, I believe we were talking, and we started talking about my number. And I think you're so gifted at what you do. You had me in tears after two little things you said, and it was really just you helping me discover something. You asked me questions to help me discover things about myself. It wasn't like you were just telling me something. And so one of the things that we talked about was, and I want you to talk about, is childhood wounds. Like there's some childhood wounds. What are those, and how do those help shape and form your number?
Yeah. So there are 9 specific types that the Enneagram is made up of. And you can only be one type. Okay. So even though you're like, well, as a child, I was this, and now I feel like this, it's really not about that. It's about the motivations of why you're doing what you're doing. So like you said, The narrative approach is more like, let me read and let me learn and let me grow. You can take a test, and that is a helping, that does help. But when it comes to the work that I do, a lot of the times I do start kind of right at that childhood wound. Like, let's just discover this and explore. Let me ask you a couple questions around this. And we all have something that our heart longs for. So each individual type has something that your heart longs to hear that kind of got lost in childhood. And it doesn't mean that you had to have a traumatic childhood at all. It just means that we're all human beings having babies and living life. And we live in a broken world. So no matter how great your home was, there's going to be pieces that you just needed in a different way. Because your parents were parented by their parents. And so everybody kind of develops patterns according to that, and then you come on the scene. So we have these childhood wounds, and they are different. A one, if you're a one, the perfectionist, your heart longs to hear that you're good. And so that's what you're kind of looking for in life and in relationship. And you're longing to hear that, is that you're good. A two longs to hear they're called the helper, and they long to know that they are loved and wanted. And in a work environment, I always replace love with needed and wanted. And in the three is the achiever. They want to know that they're accepted for who they are, that they don't have to wear a mask and pretend that they are whatever is needed in the moment or the room, but they just want to know that they can be loved for just simply being themselves. The four, the childhood wound or the childhood, what they need to hear is that they are accepted for their unique self, that they can show up and be exactly who they are, their authentic self in the moment. It's a little bit different than a three. They sound similar, a little bit different in that. They want to be, they are going to be themselves, and they want to walk into an environment and be accepted as themselves, where the three feels like they've always had to be somebody else to be accepted. The four, they want to show up as who they are, and just know that they're accepted in a room. Now, the five, they want to know that their needs are not a problem. That the world feels really big to a five. And so they want to know that when they do have needs, that there's going to be people around them to support them and help them with those needs. The six is looking for safety and security. And so they are loyal. And however, they do test boundaries. They want to know that you are who you say you are. They want to know that the institution is going to stand for what it says it's going to stand for. So they are kind of poking around, and they pick at things to make sure that they're safe and secure. The seven, they want to know that they're going to be taken care of. That's what their heart longs to hear, is that they're going to be taken care of. And so they look for that in relationships and in jobs and situations, to know that somebody has their back. And eight doesn't want to be betrayed. And so that's a big thing for childhood. Wound of an eight is betrayal. And it's not like what we think of like in marriage, like the betrayal that happens in that, but it's more than that. It's the betrayal that happens in life. They don't want to be uncovered or they don't want to be called dumb or stupid, or to look like they don't have it together. It's really, really a big deal for an eight to feel like there's people around them that will support and love them, and that they're not going to turn on them. And then a nine, they want peace and harmony. They want to know that their voice matters. And so in relationship with people, that's what they're looking for. Like, does my voice matter? Is there room for me here? And so that's what happens when we really start to discover the childhood messages and wounds that each number has. It's different, and how you go into the world and try to get those needs met is different.
So good. And I'm a seven also. And so when we were talking just about a seven and the childhood wound, and I said to you, I realized that, and maybe this could be true for other people, I'm not sure, but I know that for me, I surround myself with people who are ones. My husband is a one, all my best friends were ones. And can you give some insight? I want people to hear what you said to me, if you remember, or maybe you have a new thought today. It doesn't matter. With the one, why?
I don't remember. Will you share what I said?
Yeah.
I'll go off of it, but I don't even remember what I said.
Okay, so we talked about with numbers and compatibility. We were talking about that. We talked about stances, which I want to talk about that today too. But that with ones, I feel like the reason that I surround myself with ones is because they keep me on the rails. Like I'm just let's go have a party, let's go have fun, let's go, like, I want to make everything positive and live in the future. And for one, you know, they're always going to make the right choice, and they're going to make sure that the rules are followed, and they're going to keep me on track. And so I felt like maybe that was part of the reason why I was attracted to, or seemed to surround myself with ones, but with the childhood wound of needing security and feeling like maybe there was some piece of nurture or security that I was missing. We kind of hit on something with that.
I do think that that's interesting. You know, even, you know, I do remember our conversation. I just forget the details of all of it. And so, but yes, I think that for a 7, we do look for safety and security. And so if you're a self-preservation 7, you're looking for it even more. So safety and security. Now, one thing that I do think, even going a little bit deeper into that, what you just shared, is that it could have to do with a familiar pattern of behavior too in your family. Like this toe in the line showed you safety and security. And so you're really comfortable with that pattern of behavior. And so you are drawn to those people that show you that they are trustworthy in those ways. Because I'm a 7. And I would say that with ones, oftentimes I feel like I'm too much for a 1. Which is interesting, right? Because we're the same number, but the way that we approach life is a little bit different. You know, and that might have to do with if you're a self-preservation, social, or one-on-one, the subtypes within the numbers. But yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. You just mentioned the subtypes. Talk about that a little bit. So you have a number, and then you have wings, and people are like so confused about what. Now explain to me, what is a wing and what is a subtype? Because there's so many layers of the Enneagram. It's like you get introduced to the number, and then you have your wings, which are the numbers that are they cannot be anything but the numbers that are to either side of your number. So for a 7, it would be a 6 or an 8. And so whatever number you are, if you're a 1, then it will be a 9 and a 2. So it's the number that's directly beside your number. Those are the wings. So maybe talk about that, and then the subtypes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your wings. I'm going to drop a bunch of stuff on you guys right now. I'm going to be kind and careful, and then hopefully you can get it all. But when you figure out your number, okay, so whether you take a test, if you take a test, I love it. Great. Continue to explore to make sure that that's really your number. Okay. There's no point of doing work around something that's not truly you. So once you figure out your number, then you're right. You use the numbers to the left and to the right of you. Okay. So you're using your wings. That's what we call them. And both wings are accessible. Both wings. You have pieces of both of those inside of you and are functioning. Typically, there's one that you use more before the age of 40. You lean heavier into one wing. So for me, I'm a 7, and I leaned a lot into my 8 in my younger years. After 40, I can see a lot more of that 6 coming in, where I'm a little bit more cautious, and I want to think through things a little bit differently than I used to. But you use both parts of those wings. And so I hear a lot of people trying to define, like, okay, so now I'm a 2. So what side, what am I? Do I use the 1 or the 3? Well, just breathe. You use both. Figure out which pieces you're using of both, and ask yourself, are those pieces serving you? Is this the way that you want to show up in the world? And so there's 5 numbers. Use 5 numbers on the Enneagram for each your number, and then 4 more numbers. So your wings, and then your number that you move in growth, and your number you move in stress. So just because you find your number, don't stop there. Figure out what your wings, kind of what's happening in those numbers. And then also do some investigating. Where does my number go to in growth? So for us 7s, growth, we go to a 5. And that looks a whole lot different, So when we're kind of like go, busyness, all the things to try to quiet the anxiety for a 7, when we are centered in who we are in Christ, we are calm and we can figure things out. We are able to sit in the quiet and really take in the world in a different way. In stress, we go to a 1. So we go to that hypercritical, and we go to the lower side of a 1 until we grow into a healthier version of ourselves. Then we can go to the higher side of a 1. So that's kind of where the numbers kind of track on the Enneagram. You use 5 numbers. You have one main number, your wings, then a number you move towards in growth and a number you move towards in stress. And then we talk about subtypes. So within each Enneagram number, there is 3 different ways that you show up: the social, the self-preservation, or the one-to-one. And these are the ways that you've learned to find safety and security in the world. So this is kind of how you've gone into the world and figured out this is the best way for me to find safety and security. And I can give you a really quick overview of just what that looks like, but not necessarily go into each number if you want me to.
Yeah. Maybe tell the quick overview of those 3, and maybe you could pick a number and kind of talk about it through the lens of that number if you want to.
So the self-preservation, if you are a self-preservation, all 3 of these subtypes live inside of you, okay? So this is different than pick your number. Like, it's not really pick your number, but discover your number. This is a little bit different. All 3 of these pieces are inside of you. So one of these is dominant, one is secondary, and one is repressed. Unless you've done a lot of work on yourself, all 3 of these can be present. You can kind of feel them and see where they're showing up in different environments. Okay, so self-preservation. If you are a self-preservation person, and this is the way that you found safety and security in the world, that means that you care about the safety and security of yourself. So it's in what feels right to you. So you care about the temperature in the room. You care about having a roof over your head. You care about money in the bank account. You care about food in your pantry and on the table. And so if that's kind of you, and your home is usually cozy, there's usually pillows and blankets and candles, and you've kind of made your home this comfortable place because this is where you find safety and security. So you go back to it. If you are social, so this is a little bit different. And when we talk about social, we're not talking about extroverts or introverts, because you can be either way, an introvert or an extrovert, and be in the social subtype, because it's more about herd mentality. Like, let me figure out how to do this with people so I'm safe. Like, if I do this with a group of people, I'm less likely to get picked off. I'm less likely to get hurt. So they find their people. A lot of the times what we find with this subtype is that they have friends from like childhood that they're still friends with today. So relationships are really important to the subtype. And it doesn't mean big groups of people. It just means they find their people. This subtype, oftentimes, it's not their home environment that makes them feel safe either. So it's not like their family unit that's making them feel safe. It's usually a group of people, a friend group or a work group or something like that, where this is where they found safety and security. So in the middle of the world being like it is today, in the middle of this pandemic, in the middle of all of this, this is where if you are in this subgroup, like this subtype, you could feel yourself maybe you're just not okay. Like, you are feeling like you're losing footing, or you're feeling like you're missing out. You're feeling like you just wish that you could sit and have coffee with your people, or because being connected is really, really important to you, because it means survival. Okay. And then the one-to-one, or you'll hear it called sexual subtype within the Enneagram. It does not have anything to do with sex. It just means that there is an awareness of chemistry. So you can feel the chemistry between you and another person, or when you walk into a group, you can feel you can read the chemistry that's happening within the environment. And then you will go after relationships that are fun and stimulating and intense, and that's kind of what you look for in relationships. And so if you don't feel connected right off the bat with somebody, you're not really probably going to go back and try to make it work, where the social subtype would, let's give that another go, where the one-on-one is like, no, I'm not vibing with them. Like, let me just see what else is happening in the room. This subtype also is less concerned about safety and security of their own person. So they are more willing to take risks. They're more like, let's kind of go skydiving. Let's go see what's out there. They're more adventurous. They have more energy than the other numbers or the other subtypes. They can appear to be a little bit more rebellious, but it's not like necessarily a bad rebellion. It could be, but not necessarily a bad rebellion. It could be more like, who says I can't do that? Like, what if we could do that? Let's try. Like, that kind of take on the world.
That is so fascinating. Like when you really start to study that and you look at, I mean, even in relationship, you look at yourself, but then also yourself in relationship with other people. I think it gives you so much more understanding of other people. And I think it makes you a whole lot less judgmental. Like I feel like there's such an empathy when you understand that people have they have different life experiences. They have different lenses that they look through. I had a lens right here. I had done just a little workshop at our church. I'm going to put my funny glasses on for a second. These are my 7 glasses. These are my rose-colored pink glasses because that's the way I see the world. But I think that the exercise that I like to do is just when you put everybody that has a different number puts on a different color lens, you see things the way that you see them. And you probably are not going to completely change that, but I think there are aspects of our personality that as we understand them and we grow and we try to develop and work on those areas that are weak and try to see things from other people's perspective, that we grow in empathy. And empathy is something that we desperately need more of in the world, because I think it helps us to love each other more and understand each other more. So you talk about stances too. So that was a new thing that I had not ever heard about. So talk about stances. How does that affect the Enneagram with the Enneagram?
Okay. Yes, I love that. I love even the awareness that you just brought about how it affects relationships. So depending on what subtype your dominant number or your dominant subtype is, will affect how you are in relationship with other people. Okay. So stances, we do this too. Stances is a really, really interesting way that people that do what I do, we can use this as a great tool to help us type. If we've got a client that comes in and they're a little confused, or they've taken the test and they've gotten different numbers all the time. So stances really help us understand how we're going into the world and we're functioning in the world. Okay. So what I mean by that is if you are a 3, 7, or 8, you are in the assertive stance. And so you go into the world to get what you want. And so you'll go after it. And so 3 goes after what they want. They don't really want people to get in the way of what they're doing. They are drivers and achievers. And so they're passionate and they want to move forward in that way. The 7 is in this stance. So they are assertive. They go after what they want. And they go after it a little quicker maybe than the 3 and the 8, because they are like, oh, let's do it. Why not? Let's try it. It's like, what could happen? We can figure it out because we reframe everything to a positive. So even if it doesn't work, we'll have learned something. And then the 8 is also in that assertive stance. And so they go after what they want. They are big picture thinkers. They go after what they want with force at times. And they're not afraid to say what they want. And so they kind of show up in that way in the world. You'll feel that. You feel lots of top leaders are 8. So they're going to take charge and they're going to go after it. And they don't care if people get offended or hurt in the middle of it. So that's the assertive stance. I mean, very much in a nutshell. And then we have the compliance stance. So 1s, 2s, and 6s, they're in the compliance stance. And you may think like a 1 is. What I mean by that is they look at what's happening in the world, especially a 1, like what is acceptable? Okay, then this is how we do this. This is what's acceptable. The 2 is more relational. So they are compliant. They're like, I don't want to lose connection with my people. And so how do I need to show up? And what do I need to do to keep connection? So compliant in that way. And the 6s are problem solvers. And so they are compliant. They're like, what is the best, safest way for us to do this? And let's all do it together, because they like to gather and do things together. 6s in general. So that's the compliance stance, how they go into the world and figure out, how to get their needs met, how to be safe, how to process information is in that way. And then we have the withdrawn stance. The 4s, 5s, and 9s are withdrawn. And I don't mean that they're isolated or, depressed or anything like that. I mean that they take information in and they have to process it and they need a little bit of time. And so for us that are in the assertive stance, we don't oftentimes give those people in the withdrawn stance the time that they need to process information. So 4s, 5s, and 9s, they need time. They need to go into themselves. They need to think through what just happened, Fours are past oriented. So they take experiences or situations that happen in the moment and they kind of run it through what's happened in the past to try to make sense of what's happening right now, how they should feel about it, how they want to show up. And they need some time to process that. They're not avoiding you or ignoring you. I mean, sometimes maybe they are, but in a healthy conversation or relationship, they just need a little bit of space. Fives don't like to show emotion to anybody, even the people closest to them. They don't really want to show a lot of emotion. They want to hold it in and try to figure out what they're thinking and feeling inside. And so they pull back, process emotion, or what's happening in the moment, and then they decide how they want to show up and what they want to give to you, like what they feel comfortable with you knowing, or if it's in a work environment, what they're comfortable with moving forward. And then the 9, they are peacemakers, and they want peace and harmony in their environment. So when it doesn't feel like that, they have to pull into themselves, figure out, and tell themselves, actually, like, my voice matters, my presence matters. It's okay for me to say what I need or want in this moment. It's okay for me to show up in this moment. That's really hard for a 9 in general, to believe that people care what they say or that their presence matters. And so, so oftentimes they go into themselves, process information, and then figure out how they feel comfortable showing up in the environment or the conversation.
Wow. So much to learn. There's so much to learn and to grow in. And I just love it because it's so multidimensional. So let me ask you this. Has there been in your coaching, obviously confidentially, but in your coaching life, has there been, what has been maybe one standout, or if you can think of some moments, some aha moments that you've had with clients? Has there been like where you're like, whoa, this was pivotal in this person's life?
Mm-hmm. I love that you asked this question. And I think it's, I have had more than one client, several clients actually, maybe even more than several clients, come to me, and they either have taken a test or they've read, and they really feel like this is who they are, like, or this is what the test is telling them they are, this particular number. And more times than not, when this happens, there's other factors that are happening around it. I'm listening for words and phrases that people say to tell me what's happening, or if their number is really their number. But what happens a lot is that they come to me in stress. And so they have taken the test in stress. And so their number is reflecting them in stress. And so when I hear certain things, sometimes I just flip it upside down, and I say, okay, well, if I'm seeing this right, and you really feel like you're presenting as a 1, or you're testing as a 1, but it doesn't quite fit to me, and there's just things about it that don't quite fit, or things about childhood that you're telling me that don't quite fit, I will say, let's explore another number. And when I say that, it's usually because I feel like, I've heard something that doesn't quite line up. And we'll go to a 7, and let's talk about a 7. Let's see what's going on. And, I've had a client recently that this happened with, and it was like this big, huge aha moment of like, oh my gosh, I finally can breathe. Like, I feel like I've tried to fit myself in that 1 box because that's what people told me I was for so long. And I'm not. I'm actually a 7. So there's been huge growth in that. And that's happened quite a few times, that we've flipped the stress upside down, and we've looked at, like, where does this number, what number goes to you in stress? Let's see, when you're not in this situation, let's see if this is how you really show up, and the motivations behind it. So it's the motivations behind it that I'm really looking for.
That's really awesome. Is there anything that we haven't talked about so far that you would like to talk about or share? Is there anything on your heart right now? Is there anything that you're just thinking about with Enneagram and just where it's headed in the future, maybe what you'd like to see happen in the world of Enneagram? Is there anything that you'd like to share that I didn't ask?
Well, I love my focus of attention with Enneagram is empathy and compassion. And so what I do love about the Enneagram is that it brings awareness, and we have to start with ourselves first, because if we're going to do anything for the kingdom of God, we have to have an understanding of who we are, and we have to like ourselves. And so it tells us in scripture, like, love your neighbor as yourself. if you're a spouse and you're supposed to love your spouse as yourself. Well, you can't do that if you don't even like who you are. And so a lot of the work around the Enneagram is kind of figuring out and discovering what's happening within yourself, and then seeing the high sides of yourself, seeing the beautiful parts that God created you. And so I do focus. We have to go to the ugly places, all those places within Enneagram work that I do with clients. I do have to go to those places, but I want you to see the beauty that lies within you. I want you to see the beauty that Christ made you to be and the gift they put within you that will shine to the world. So empathy on yourself. Empathy, and the difference between sympathy and empathy, right? Sympathy, you're standing at the top of the well and you're looking in like, oh man, I'm sorry you had a bad day. That really stinks for you. Empathy is climbing down into the well and sitting next to the person and saying, tell me about your bad day. Not, I'm going to carry your bad day. Let me take your bad day and put it on me. That would be codependency. We're not talking about that. Empathy is like, I hate you had a bad day. Let me hear about what happened. Okay. And so when we can get to empathy, then we can get to compassion. And that is the beautiful transformation. Compassion is care and action. So we move from empathy to compassion, where we take compassion and we're able to help people walk through, or help ourselves walk through where we need to go to grow and to be the creation that God created us to be. And that's what I really feel passionate about with the work of the Enneagram, and especially when we infuse it with the scripture and the truth, the word of God, is that people grow in empathy and compassion for themselves first, and then it bleeds into all other areas of their life. They're able to see people with a new lens, just like you said, put on somebody else's lens and have empathy and compassion for them.
So good. I was thinking one of the aha moments, and I'll just share this one, is that my husband is a 1, and through, he is a 1. And one of the things about the 1 is about the criticism. Like he can notice things because he wants everything to be right. He wants everything to be good. He wants it to be perfect. And so it can be frustrating for me as a 7 because I'm like, woohoo, whatever, let's go. And he'll point out things. And one of the things that I learned through this journey was the motive behind the criticism was not a bad thing. He really wants things to be good. He wants them to be better. Mm-hmm. So it's not that he's coming at me to tear me down. That was definitely not the goal. Mm-hmm. His goal was always to try to make me better, or whatever situation he's in, he wants to see it improve. He's always looking for ways that it can improve. And then knowing that he has the inner critic that's just so loud, that's screaming at him all the time, all the things that he's doing wrong, helps me to be a better encourager to him. So I think as we learn about our number, and we learn about ourselves, and we learn about other people around us, it helps us to communicate better. It helps us to understand each other more. So that can help in marriages, in families, in workplaces, in church relationships, in whatever relationship that you're in. It can help us to grow and have better relationships. And that's super important, right? Because we're supposed to love God and love others. That's the 2 greatest commandments. And if we can't do that, we're not going to be able to love each other well. So I think that the work that you do is so important. And I want people to be able to find you, because you can actually, doesn't matter where you live, right? They can still have one-on-one consultations with you. They can find you. Tell us where to find you. Tell people where they can find you.
So on Instagram, I am Enneagram with JB. And you can follow my stuff. There's lots of content on there, and DM me and talk to me that way. I love to hear what's happening in everybody's world and how they're processing information, or maybe if you're a different number, and you're reading it and you're like, I don't really relate to that. I'd love to hear how you do relate to it, because it helps me better in what I do. So that you can do. I also have a website, and that is enneagramwithjb.com. And on my website, it tells you, services offered and all that kind of stuff. Also, there's a free PDF on there that you can download, and you could sign up for a 30-minute free call if you're just kind of curious or you got a question about the Enneagram. And you can email me at jb@enneagramwithjb.com if you want anything or need anything further from me in that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you're on. I feel like this is going to help so many people as they dive more into this and find out more about themselves and discovery. So I have one last question, This is for fun. I always ask people because I think that people are a gift, and I get to meet the best people. I feel like God has just blessed me to be able to meet the coolest people. Everybody I meet, I think, oh my gosh, everybody should meet you. Like, everybody should know you. You are so awesome, and that's how I feel about you. Everyone should meet you. Every person is a gift. But when it comes to gifts, has there been a gift? Can you think of a gift that someone has ever given you, just a gift that really stands out to you? It doesn't have to be your favorite gift. That's too much pressure to put on somebody. But what is one gift that you've received that just really touched you, or that you thought was a really cool gift or a funny gift? Doesn't matter. What's a gift that you've received?
I love books. So I love to read. So when people, gift me, the Enneagram book that started this whole process for me, oh my gosh, that is probably like, yes. I love to read. So I love to read fiction and nonfiction. So I think that I think as a 7, maybe that's even part, like I can get lost in somebody else's story, and that's super fun. Or I can take all these different pieces. If I'm reading about, attachment theory, I can put all these different pieces together in what I do. So probably books are my favorite.
Awesome. What's your favorite book, or what book are you reading now?
Actually, I am reading this book, The Power of Showing Up. And so it's like attachment theory, and it's for parents to, how to show up for your kids better, but it talks about your own self in it. And so I just wish that the world would stop. What kind of did stop, but mine didn't with all my children at home, just so I could just soak it all up. So I love things like that. So I'm reading that. And then I'm reading The Circle by Ted Dekker. Do you know him as an author?
Who is it?
He's a Christian author. Ted Dekker.
I've seen him. I've seen ads, I think, on Facebook, like pop-up ads, but I've not read anything of his.
Yeah, so he's a Christian author, and he wrote this trilogy called The Circle, and I just love his writing. I love all of his writing, so I can get lost in his books. So those are the two. So one for fun and one for knowledge.
Well, I'm going to write all those down because I love to read too. So I have a really long list of books that I need to read. I don't know about you. But thank you so much for being on. I so appreciate you, and I look forward to being in touch more. I'm sure we'll have you back again.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for checking out today's podcast. I know we mentioned lots of books and lots of websites, and so we have all of those in the show notes, so make sure you check those out, find out what your number is, comment, like, subscribe, share in all the places, Facebook, Instagram. We're on Glisten Women on Facebook and Instagram, and let me know your number. I'd love to hear more about what you found out about yourself, and if you have any book suggestions, you can share those as well. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.